Julie Hussey has been involved with public engagement for many years here in the Lowcountry. Now she wants to take that experience to the State House to represent the constituents of South Carolina Senate District 43. I talked one-on-one with Julie about the issues in the district for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Julie Hussey, welcome to Quintin's
Yes.
Close-Ups.
Oh, thank you, Quintin. I'm so excited to be here. It's a real honor to be on this side. A little scary because I'm used to being I'm used to telling other people to go talk to you. You know, and then it's always like that you can be tough on them, and I'm like, oh well, that didn't go as well as we hoped. Now it's me.
Hey, like I just told someone just a few minutes ago, hey, I'm a journalist, got to do my job, got to hold people accountable. Nothing personal.
Well, no, I was lucky because I've done public engagement and outreach. And one of the things that's really important, I remember having a journalist friend say to me, 95% of the time we're on the same page. We're both trying to get out information and share information. There's going to be times where, to your point, he's like, I have to be the journalist and you have to be the public information person. And on those times, you might have information you don't want to share, and I have information I need to get. Yes. And we may clash a little bit, but we're doing our jobs. And in the end, we're all, our goal is to communicate people the best we possibly can. So hopefully we'll be on the same, we'll be in the 95%. If not, that's what good conversations are about.
And I'm having a conversation with you now, Julie, because obviously you want to continue your public engagement in the community, because now you are a Democratic candidate for South Carolina Senate District 43, which covers?
Well, that's a good question. It's a long, skinny district. It starts in Mount Pleasant, in the 10-mile community, Bulls Bay, and runs all the way down the water side of 17. Now, it also includes Carolina Park, Dale Creek, and that side of 17, but only those. Doesn't include Dunes West or Park West. But then goes down 17, hits where Hamlin, Porteous Bluff, Hamlin comes up, and then runs all the way down Rifle Range, and then includes pretty much kind of inside Bowman. I mean, there's little parts it doesn't. Like I'm in the Ion neighborhood, the back of the Ion neighborhood is another district. It's kind of crazy. Goes downtown, almost makes like a nail on the end of the tip of the peninsula. It's over on James Island, Fort Johnson, Harbor View, but it also includes all the islands. So it's got Isle of Palm, Sullivan's, Folly, Edisto, a little bit of Edisto Island, pretty much most of it. Some of it's in Colleton, some the beaches actually, and beaches in Colleton, the rest of it's in Charleston County. Then goes down to, I know it's like it keeps going. Then goes down to Ladies Island, St. Helens Island, Fripp Island, Paris Island, Spring Island, Kalawasi, and Port Royal, and a little bit of Burton and down in Beaufort. So it's a long, skinny district. It's been carefully selected by previous owners or previous representatives.
Now that it's been carefully chosen by some of these people, how does that change the quality of life there?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, this is certainly with the beaches and the coast, this is a really high quality of life district for certain. I mean, it's really designed for that. It's also a district that gets a lot of federal funding. All those beaches, the intercoastal, Coast Guards in the district, Paris Islands in the district, the parks departments with Fort Sumter, also down in down on St. Helens Island, the Penn Center. So there's just a lot of transportation projects that need to get us onto our bridges, that need to get us onto our islands and things. So there's a lot of federal funding. That's definitely a unifying aspect of the district. Again, it's very coastal. And interestingly, what I've loved about it is it's also the Gullah Geechee corridor, which is really nice. And I think my understanding of that and recognition of that, just by starting to study the history of the district, really, I think, opens up some really interesting conversations for engagement, for people to understand this district in a new way and think about resiliency, how we've grown over time, how we've gotten where we are, and kind of as we think about how do we want to be in the future.
How do you, as a candidate now for this particular district, look at District 43 in a new way?
Well, I really do. It really has. That's been the job. That's how I've seen the job as a candidate, is to really go out and for me to get to understand the district, get to really meet people that live in it and hear their stories. And at the same time, hopefully for them to get to know me and see me as a person who's inquisitive, who cares, who wants to make the district better. And I think the things that I've learned along the way is that we've got a lot of beaches. So those beaches are changing. I think you've done some stories with maybe Mayor Pounce, other people talking about how beaches are changing, how those are some real challenges. I mean, I was talking to a woman on Sunday and she came to me and she said, the beach is coming into my house and I need some help. I need some assistance in that, trying to understand navigating what do we need to do. And at the same time, there's other places on the island where beach seawalls have kind of extended out into the beach and now kind of claimed more. So the beach is coming to them some way, they've pushed off the beach. So those are challenges. The challenge is that the beach needs to be renourished. The beach it's everybody's beach. I mean, it's God's beach. It's everyone's beach to enjoy. But how do you get out there? Is everybody's cars opportunity to go to the beach? I don't know. That's at some point, maybe there's some shuttle services, maybe there's some other things. How do you preserve it? You've got Edisto, that's a much slower pace. They love it out there. I was at a festival with them on Saturday, and keeping Edisto is really, really important to them. Keeping Folly. I don't want to sound maternal. I don't want to sound, everybody's different, but it does feel like you've got a lot of different unique spaces and places that need their own attention. And then again, you have this really deep history. I mean, so many indigenous people's names in the places that we have, so much history of who was there. I started out, one of my first festivals I attended was the Gullah Geechee Festival down in Beaufort. And that was just so fascinating. I mean, you've done, so much work on this, but just fascinating, really understanding that some of these beaches were where people were living, because that was not the high quality property. That wasn't where the fancy people lived. That was where there was hard to grow things. It was buggy. It was hot, sandy. So people were living there because that was kind of the leftover property that they were allowed to continue to stay and hold for years.
Wow. And I'm biased here because I worked on Sullivan's Island for so long for the restaurant group from 2018 up until this past year. But when you look at District 43 as a whole, you mentioned some of those beaches, including Sullivan's Island. But how do you make District 43 better today so that South Carolina can be competitive tomorrow?
Well, that's a great question. And I think some of it is really helping us be resilient and kind of using that term. And again, like I said, honoring people who've been resilient on these islands for a really long time, seeing how they've changed. But also you worked with you've talked about the restaurant group. And I think that resilience, this is a need where there's a lot of risk because there's a lot of storms. There's a lot of things that are coming, and risk means insurance is a major issue for this community. Taxes are an important issue. Insurance is an important issue, all these different things. And insurance, we've seen a lot of increases in restaurants and bars having really high insurance rate growth. Like some of them have tripled their price. And that's a huge, as in the restaurant business, when you've kind of got, that's a lot more food you need to be selling. That's a lot more drinks you need to be selling, honestly, to help get those margins, to make them, because it's usually a pretty tight margin place. And we've also seen some increases in paying, our employees, which we all need. I mean, that's really important. So there's just not a lot of give. And I think what I've realized going through the district is understanding, boy, how did I live on the coast and not really understand insurance and how the state impacts insurance? How does it, where can the state help insurance prices go down? Where's the state maybe needs to add cost, needs to cover, make sure people that are impacted need to get that insurance, how the insurance is there. So that's been a really interesting issue that I really didn't know a lot about, that I'm learning a lot more about as I've talked to different people.
When it comes to these insurances for the restaurant groups, and obviously that's a big topic, as you know, where should that balance be for the state of South Carolina?
Yeah,
the restaurants give a lot.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, restaurants are a huge part of this district. It's a lot of hospitality in this district, and so I completely agree with you. And I'm going to say I don't know. I mean, I think that I really want to comment to a space of inquisitiveness, because I've talked to attorneys and people that are representing victims of crimes, and we do have a high. I was talking to the police last night. We have a high number of drunk driving incidents, and so we've got to curb that. We have to address that. People are getting hurt, and innocent people who are just driving on the road are getting hit by somebody who's intoxicated. So that is a problem. Now, at the same time, we have restaurants that might have served somebody a Bloody Mary in the morning with a huge big breakfast. The person goes home, sleeps, and then at 12 o'clock the next, in the 11 o'clock the next night. So maybe they had the Bloody Mary at 10 in the morning, 11 at night. After drinking a whole bunch, they get an accident, and the person at 12, the person who served the Bloody Mary is in the same insurance kind of claim as the person who served the last drink. And that feels, I think the most people on the street feels like that doesn't, somewhere there needs to be some conversation about this. And so I think it's really easy to kind of say it's insurance versus lawyers. And I just don't find a lot of solutions when we're, team this or team that. Somewhere in the middle, there's a conversation that I think as South Carolinians, again, we need to understand, where is the state helping the situation and where is the state exacerbating the problem?
Where is the state exacerbating the problem, and where exactly are they helping?
Well, I'm still learning. I'll just be honest, I'm still learning because, as I said, this was something that immediately, my last name's Hussey. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to have some fun t-shirts that say Hussey on them. And I say this story because the people that were helping with that t-shirts are, their families in the bar business. And so they said, "Hey, Julie, this is an important issue." And I'm like, "Really?" And but I kept hearing it. I kept hearing it and hearing it. So I've started to talk to people and find out. I think some of it is, and Quintin, because your experience, you probably know more about this than I do, but I think some of it is that line of, is everybody to blame the same? Or is there, who's the different levels of responsibility? Where's the levels of responsibility hit? And, so apparently if you serve liquor, you have a higher level of responsibility than if you just serve beer. So, okay, but how does that all play out when it comes to who's responsible for the consequences of those actions? What's the level of responsibility? I was at one event and they were talking about, so let's say that, it's so hard to imagine this, but let's say that you have to qualify someone's life. Someone's life was, their life was worth $5 million. Well, it's my understanding that if they go to each person, that there might be some people that, let's say that three of the different contributors to this issue have already paid out $3 million. Well, when they go to the court case, whoever stays on in the case is still going for $5 million. So ultimately the person can get $8 million. Now, again, it's a life. My God, and these are jury trials. So these are other things that are going on, but they don't get to say they've already gotten $3 million. Just, if that makes sense. There's just some conversations about that I think we need to have more conversations. There are a lot of lawyers in Columbia. There's a lot of trial lawyers in our state house, because it's a good place. If you know how to argue your case, you're going to be a good legislator. I think there also needs to be some people that are willing to kind of have the conversation of but where is the middle? Where's the place that's keeping our state? Because we can't have our small businesses go out of business. That's not. I think Folly has a couple of boarded up restaurants that people have left. So that's not good either.
Well, let me ask you this, Dan. Since this insurance situation has come to light, really, or fruition,
Mm-hmm.
How many of these businesses in your district have actually closed?
I'm not sure. I did hear that there was 2 on Folly that were boarded, that had closed, and that came up in a conversation with them. I'm not really. I know we had one business on Edisto that closed, but it closed because of the hurricane.
Right.
From the tornado from the hurricane. So we've had that. So I don't know. To your point, I don't know exactly how many, but I'm hearing, and maybe we haven't seen it yet because the rise has just happened, and now it's kind of that first year of, can I handle this extra cost? But I think it's taken its toll, and it definitely, there is that question of, do you want to get into this business when you've got this huge expense it's hard to control? Some of it, one of the things I've learned in the traffic, because I did a lot of work with DOT on traffic projects and highway projects. And if it takes you an hour to get to work every day, then you plan. It's an hour to get to work. But if some days there's an accident and it takes you 2 hours to get to work, and some days it only takes you 30 minutes to get to work, it's really hard to plan your schedule around that because you can't set up meetings for the first 2 hours of your day because you don't know how long it's going to take. And it's that same thing with a small business. If you don't know, if you buy a house and you plan for the insurance, you have a business, and you plan for the insurance. If that insurance like triples on you in 1 year, it really throws off all of your numbers. And you may be able to accommodate it, but you might not. And I think it's that out of control part that feels really scary for people, and it's hard to really make the numbers work.
And so how much are these restaurants in your district actually paying now for this type of insurance?
I feel like I heard one say that their rate had gone, it had gone up like 3 times. So, I don't know. I know my business doesn't have anything to do with insurance. My husband and I have a business together, and our insurance is about $15,000 a year. And that's our building insurance, kind of some of our liability insurance. So, if that went up 3 times, that's $45,000. I can tell you that's a $30,000 difference, and we don't sell alcohol. So, just imagine it's going to, I'm just saying that if your interest goes from 15 to 45, that's an employee that you might need to cut. That is, that's that extra, that's any kind of money that you maybe made in the past. And there's that question of how long, do we just hope that this is a temporary thing and then we're going to be able to get it fixed in the legislature and get it go down? Or is this the new way of doing business?
What law would you propose right now if you were in the state legislature?
I can't tell you, and I don't know. And I'm going to just be completely honest about that because, again, I'm still trying to understand the situation. And I recognize that going up, I would be a new state senator. So I really think that part of it's going to be understanding the situation. But I also realize I've heard things of, there's there's a pinpoint fix. Okay, we're going to fix this one thing. The restaurants, and that area has a lot of people's attention because who doesn't like to go out to eat? And it's not fun I get the impression it's not fun to be elected and then people, they want you to fix their problem. They want, so you want the people that are serving your food to like you and you want to help them. So that's really important. The challenge is part of the law, as I understand it, part of the law, how it's affecting some of the statutes, the rules that we have that affect the costs that are hurting the restaurants are also affecting traffic fatality. Are also affecting the trucking business, affecting road construction projects, other people that have liabilities to accidents and other things that are also interested. So that they would like a bigger fix to the problem, and I everybody that wants their immediate fix would like to get that quickly as possible. And then sometimes the people that want something more are going to hurt are going to become the enemy of the good. Sometimes the enemy of the good might be wanting more. So I do think there's going to, and I can see, and I've heard that in the past that's been part of the challenge is that people want it to go a little farther. It's like, okay, this was good, but we need it if we're going to solve the problem, let's solve the complete problem. And so I think solving the complete problem brings more people into the picture, but it also makes it more complicated. So I think those are the questions that I'll be looking to other more experienced senators to do, and then making sure that our community understands what it is that we're debating before we're debating it, when they have a chance to really speak and let me know what's going on so that I can be as effective for them as possible.
So what pinpoint fixes now can actually help you all understand this complete problem in the future?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it does have something from some of the conversations I've had. And I just say this as someone who's been trying to understand this and lots of other issues that are out there. But I do think that I think some of it has to do, again, with it could be as simple as jury instructions. Does the jury understand some of this has already been paid? It could be defining a little bit. The legislature did change like all the restaurants have to have $1 million in liability insurance, where before they only had to have less. Well, that's really important because if you get an accident, you want to make sure that the person is covered, but at the same time, so things like that changed it. So there's a lot of little details that I'm going to trust that people in the district that understand the problem can help inform me in a way to be a good advocate for them. I feel like that's the job, is to be the advocate for them, to not, this isn't my number one issue that I know everything about. I'm coming into it, know everything about.
And I know you brought it up a couple of times earlier, Julia, but to me about those road construction projects right now in District 43. What are the most pressing right now?
Well, I think that I think we've got some bridge projects down in Beaufort. They've got an old bridge that they've got onto Ladies Island that I know needs, I think needs a little bit of upgrading. I think I think we have some of our infrastructure projects. I think we have some transit infrastructure projects or some ways of getting, people to the beaches maybe in other ways beyond just their personal individual car. I would like to see some of those projects go across. 526 is obviously a big project in our community that seems to have come back up again, or it's definitely come back up again in some of the conversations for the sales tax. And that one is an interesting one because it doesn't actually, it impacts people that are on the edge of the district, but it doesn't run really through the district. It's almost as if this district is designed for it not to run through this district. But I think that, I guess, it doesn't, it may, I don't think it runs in the district. So that conversation, I'm really keeping my eye on what other people, how the voters are voting. And we're saying it's hard to be a public engagement person and not feel like you need to make sure you get that public engagement on what people want and where they are. But I do know Johns Island traffic is a challenge. And I think, as I've noted before, initially the conversation about 526 was keep Johns Island rural or not rural. I don't know if you remember that conversation. It was years ago, and we're past that point now. That's not at least for part of Johns Island. Wadmalaw perhaps is still, staying rural and other things. But Maybank Highway, I worked on the city's water plan, and Maybank Highway and Clements Ferry are the highest, or some of the highest land in the city of Charleston. So that is where it does make sense for some development to go. But that also, if you're putting people there, they've got to be transportation ways for them to get around. The roads need to connect. It needs to be well. And you certainly, again, we see these storms. We've got to have ways for some of these islands to evacuate people, put them back on, that type of stuff. So,
where in your district can you put more development right now that are actually connected to some of these infrastructure projects?
Well, I think I would say this district, and remember, most of it is, it's islands. A lot of it's really built out in this district. It's not, there's other districts that have, I don't have Maybank Highway. I don't have 41. I don't have some of this area. So this district, I think what we're trying to figure out, what I'm hearing some talk about is one, how do we create a little bit of diversity of housing options in there, because we need people that work there, people that need to, an island can't just have one group of people. There's a lot of people that serve those people. So, let's say that you're Kiowa and you've got a lot of people in the hospitality business that are supporting a lot of those things. So I think I'm hoping that we'll start seeing some creative ideas about how do we create some new housing opportunities that kind of creates opportunities for workers and for people that can pay multi-million dollars for their, houses along the coast. So I think there's going to be some conversations about kind of fitting in some housing or thinking of that. And again, I'm really open to other people's suggestions. I'm not coming with some grand plan, but just an awareness that it's there. I know down in Beaufort and St. Helena's Island, where there is a lot of land, they're really in trying to understand. They really want to do some cultural protection and make sure that land grows in a way that grows with the community, and that the community is able to continue to keep its rural. I think that a lot of that is kind of this Gullah Geechee community that's lived there for so long. How can it participate in that growth? How does it feel like the growth is happening with it and not to it? So I know there was a big golf course community and that community didn't fit into the cultural overlay that they have. 10 Mile in Mount Pleasant is also trying to figure out what's their cultural overlay. I think you've talked with some of the 41. You talked to Donna Brown Newton and 41. How do we protect some of the culture that's there? How do we keep our places? How do they not become everywhere? And then that's a continual thread in this conversation, because the insurance, if you're running out the small businesses, the small local restaurant groups, the small, one restaurant, or that feeling of the community of people who've lived there for generations. How are you thinking about them in an equitable way that brings everybody to the table?
A couple of things there, Julie. Well, let me ask the obvious. How do you grow District 43 with smart growth?
again, I think I'll tell you the storms that have happened, that we've really seen. I mean, to run for this district. I mean, I've lived here for a long time. I've lived in the district. Literally, I think in the district, just understanding how the lines have changed. I think I've lived in the district for about 24 years. And I've lived in Charleston for about 33. So I've lived on the coast. I've been through storms. I've been through all that. But this was the first time that I'm in the storm, and I'm getting to know, talking to the mayors, talking to people that live on this coastal community. And here comes this storm, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how are these people that I've met? How is this community that I'm striving to represent, how is it being impacted? It's scary because it's just felt like one storm after another coming. And then to see what's happened in Florida, to see what's happened in North Carolina, and really in the upstate of South Carolina and some of Aiken, really has made me think a lot about how do we grow in a way that we can accommodate, we can acknowledge that everything that we're building could be, could have a storm come that we really can't control. And how do we prepare for that? Like, I was talking with the people in Edisto, and they're working to build a recreation center down there. And that recreation center is really important for a lot of the elderly people and the young people they have in the community. They have to like drive miles and miles to go practice basketball and that type of stuff. So they would like to have some of this, introduce pickleball, things like that. But that rec center could also be a place that people are housed if something happens to the island and they can't live on the island for 2 weeks while we get, get some of the infrastructure set back up again. So we've got to be thinking about that, of not just how do you live in our district, but also how would you evacuate our district? How do you get back on? How do you create a district that is able to weather storms together and build that type of community that strengthens us, that doesn't tear us apart?
What 5-point plan do you have for things like this?
Oh. Well, I think I don't know that I have a 5-point plan. And again, part of it, but I don't want to seem like I haven't thought about it. What I really thought about is how do we make government more, how do we make sure that government's able to have bigger conversations? I think we've had a government that is a lot of kind of call your friend, call your buddy. A lot of it's, I'm heading off to Columbia. I'll see you guys later. I'll bring you back some toys and treats, from my trip. Where the government has felt so removed from the people. So I think I would say my plan is to make certain that people know that they have an access point who is here working to help explain and talk to them about what their needs are, and make sure that we can hopefully bring the people together. Not necessarily guarantee I'm going to be able to solve all of your problems, but I am going to make sure that you've got a listening voice on the other end of the phone, and that you've got someone who can try to figure out to get to the bottom of what is the challenge you've got, who are the people that need to be in that room to help make sure that your challenge is respected, and that hopefully we can learn from your experience and find some solutions. I think the next thing is to make sure that when I get to Columbia, that I am really, that we're a little more proactive. We're not just saying, this is what happened last week, here's an update of what I did, but this is what's coming up. Tell me, I need to get some feedback from you. Sandy Sen was really great at that. I really have so much respect for how she listened to the community that she was serving and asked for their feedback on issues, especially if they're controversial. And I think and even with that, being even more proactive, like the insurance conversation, other things, and trying to figure out how to make sure that those conversations that I'm either attending or I'm supporting conversations in the community, to make sure that I am getting that feedback so that I can represent it properly. And then finally, to make sure that government is as efficient as it possibly can in doing the work that needs to get done to put some of these infrastructure solutions into place. Because I think that if we want to privatize some government, which we have, like DOT cannot manage $1 billion projects, multiple $1 billion projects at a time. They take a lot of people. So they need to contract some of that work out, which is some of the work that I did before. And we need to make sure that DOT is designed to, and other agencies are designed to manage and to support and to hold up the needs of the public in getting this work done.
How would you actually revitalize some of these state agencies from a state legislative perspective?
Well, I think some of it is you're such a good at answering questions because you know how to get to people's hot buttons. Because to me, the one thing is I I started my company to help DOT communicate straight to the public.
Okay.
Our state agencies serve the public. And so, but they also get their funding from the legislature. So it's really easy to go to treat the person who's providing your funding as your customer. Is that, and the legislature is not your customer, they're your funder. Like they're the legislature to me is saying, how do we take the assets and resources we have and use them as efficiently as we possibly can to do the most good out in the community? I mean, I don't see taxes as like this burden. I see this as our investment in each other, our investment in the things we want to do. So that money needs to be treated like an investment. They're really making, wise decisions of where they're going to go. And then the state agencies really are the ones that need to be reaching out into the community and working together to go help the community. And that's kind of what we did with DOT, was to make sure that the state agencies, that DOT and each project, because each project is how it touches down. Maybe it's DSS and it's touching a family in a conversation that somebody's having in an office. That's that interaction. That's the public agency's job, is the interaction between the service that's being provided and the public that's receiving that service. And then hopefully the legislature's job is to make sure that this work from the ground is telling the grass tops what more it needs, what the support it needs, what's more of the funding, the other opportunities that it needs.
Do you believe that DOT is connected with the community like they used to be?
I do. I think in a lot of ways, I think in some ways they're a lot better. I mean, they do. There was a time, you might remember, where it was kind of, it was a little bit of the legislature would scream about something and all of a sudden everybody would rush over. One legislator would, so the public always kind of called their legislator, the legislator complained, and then things happened. And I think DOT has really worked to really reach out in the community and do a lot more work in the community. I'm really proud of that. And by no means, I've worked with DOT, so I know them maybe better than everybody else. And by no means am I suggesting that they are not doing a job, that they are not working hard to do what they need to do. I just think there might be some opportunities that the legislature can be more supportive for them and help them be better at the job that they're doing.
And if you were to privatize some of these services, how much would that save the state of South Carolina?
Well, I think we're already privatizing a lot of those services. I mean, that was the work that I was doing as I was a private company that was received, that was on an RFP. So we already are doing that. So I think I'm not suggesting that we do more. I'm just acknowledging that some of these contracts are really big, and especially some of these road projects are getting really big. And it's different to do a project where you're buying asphalt for a road and you just need who's got the cheapest price, who has the best connections or this, and one that it's a really complicated project. And that more complicated project it does need, we as the public, we need to be able to give the money, and then we also need to grab that money back if the job wasn't done properly.
What is the return on investment with some of these projects so far?
That's a really good question. And I mean, I think let's take on the return of the investment question. I mean, I think that's huge. I mean, to have the Cooper River Bridge, to work on the Cooper River Bridge, that was a $500 million project, very, very expensive. How much, what is that growth? I mean, that growth has meant that Mount Pleasant and Charleston, our whole community is much more connected than it was before. It is a postcard project that is beautiful and is now a new icon for our community that we can, showing images of Charleston and attracting people to come here. So I would say we've most definitely gotten our money back on that project. Now, do we want to make sure that we are growing close to, if we put in a big project, then does it make sense to go to build around the infrastructure that we've already invested in? Like where 526 comes down to 17 and then right. Dix is a great thing, but like that would be a good place to have an area that's generating a lot of tax dollars, not just a huge parking lot, because we've already invested a lot of public money in those roads that come together there. And so I think from that, I would say the Port Access Road, that was a huge generator, so the reason that we get a lot of federal funding is because our roads are carrying a lot of freight coming out of the port, and that it helps the entire country. So there's a huge return of investment on that. So,
yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. Oh no, I was just saying I would have probably 3 minutes left for you.
Okay.
Yeah, Zoom's 40 minutes, But let
Yeah,
me ask
no.
you, over the past 4 years, how much federal funding has returned to District 43?
Gosh, that's I don't know. I would love to know, and I'm going to work on getting that question back to you, and I'll put it in the comments if I can find it out.
Sure.
I mean, I think if you imagine and think about just if you look at the port access road, I mean, like it's the bridge and the others. I mean, it's billions of dollars. 526 and 26
Right.
is a major project. Expanding 526 towards East Cooper and the port. That's another. Those are major projects. So we've had a lot of money in here for certain. We're very lucky, and that's the state and federal's job. And that's our job, is to invest in the resources that we have.
And speaking of resources, where else in District 43 can you actually generate tax dollars by creating some of the things that you just mentioned?
This is a little bit outside of District 43, but I am concerned that the seawall down in Beaufort needs to, the edge of Beaufort, kind of in the same way that and the edge of the battery needed to be redone. I think Beaufort's got that same problem. So I know that's a project there's part of it's in the district, but not all of it. So that is something that I think needs to be considered. I know that down in St. Helena Island that they're really thinking about. They've got the Penn Center and other things. Is there a space to put some infrastructure for more of a performing arts center, or some more kind of a place where events and performances can happen that can tell the story of the Penn Center a little bit more of an arts manner? I think that there's opportunities to maybe improve some of the transit opportunities that are here that are available. I mean, getting more transit, and then also thinking a little bit about that affordable housing.
And quickly, in 20 seconds, what do you need exactly when it comes to housing? Is it workforce housing, or is it attainable housing, or is it actually affordable housing?
Well, that's a good question. It all depends. I think it's housing for the workers that are working in the district. I mean, I think that's what in our district. I think there's some places that certainly we have firemen of those people, but we also have a lot of restaurant people, a lot of other people that are really working in service jobs for the hospitality. That's a major part of the coast.
Julie Hussey, thank you for your time here on Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for the hard questions. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.